Hello and
Oh,
welcome to another someone's echoing there. Another AutoTalk weekly wrap. Now, sorry, we're a few minutes late. I was blasting down from Whangarei back to my home here in Mangawhai, and apparently every one of you Aucklanders are exiting Auckland already and leaving town with caravans and jet skis and whatever in tow, including an annoying person who had their jet ski parked across the electric vehicle charger at the McDonald's in Whangarei. Now, I'm not going to detail why I was at McDonald's in Whangarei, but let's just say I've got a toddler. Now, joining me, of course, as always, is our news editor, Matthew Henson, and used car dealer, consultant, storm chaser, electric van driver, whatever he is going by this week, Graham McDonald. Now, how are you guys enjoying your first day back in Orange?
it's the first day back, really?
Second day
Didn't notice, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a bit like that, really, isn't it? I mean, I think people gave up a lot of this stuff a while ago.
Yeah, I think it's an anticlimax, really. Look, if you're in hospitality, obviously it makes a big difference. But for the motor industry in general, I don't see much change, if any. Dealerships have been working out their own way through this for quite some time now. There's not really a difference in setting. Sure, I can't think of any differences that it'd make to your business in terms of how you trade, surely.
Mm-hmm. I mean, let's face it, there were certain elements of the trade that as soon as we kind of dropped out of hard lockdown, just threw the doors open and said, come and buy some cars and have a chat and a handshake and a coffee, and we might rinse the cup off in the cold tap afterwards. But by and large, I think most of us obey the rules. Anyway. So let's run through the kind of key stories this week. Now, improvements sought to EV data system. Changes are being sought to the EV registration process, especially around emissions data, after one EV dealer reported hiccups with the system. I think it's more than one dealer now. Henry Schmidt of AutoLink EV says the system is a total mess after he's advised EVs he was attempting to register would incur a $3,000 fee rather than a rebate, and that the whole procedure was leading to delays in registering and delivering his EVs. I guess we'll go back to you on this one, Graham. You're the one at the coalface. You've had any similar issues?
Yeah, we have, and we've got one that's outstanding at the moment that hasn't been resolved. We've had both. We've had a couple of hybrids that have supposedly incurred a fee. We've had one vehicle that NZTA insisted had already been plated and registered about a month ago when we had the MR2A in our hand showing that it was done on the 1st of April. I haven't had any vehicles that have been overestimated on fees, but yeah, there are certainly still issues. Now, just should I point out, it's really easy for us to bag the system. The numbers you gave last week, I think, which was at 12,000 rebates processed by last Thursday. So anybody in the industry knows that the creaky old thing that we call the MVR was never really designed to process this many transactions or have them coming through that portal. And there were going to be delays. And I think, to be fair, whether NZTA had recognised that and knew there would be some problems along the way, or whether it's come as a complete surprise. But I don't think anyone in the trade would be particularly surprised that there's been issues. And all that has to happen is they get resolved. If they're resolved, you can explain to a customer what's happening. It's the unresolved ones where they get put into the too hard basket that I have an issue with.
Mm-hmm. Now, Matthew, we've had a couple of stories come in through like this, but oddly, I'm kind of getting the feeling that, there have been issues by and large, considering the nature of change. We're not actually hearing that much from the field.
No, not particularly. A lot of sort of pre-show jitters from certain dealerships, but in the story that we had this week, kind of done by Jeff Dobson, he cited he had a chat to GVI and Hayden Johnston over there, who reported that they were having a pretty good turn of things. So it seems like sort of a results may vary, but certainly people having a bad experience doesn't really give them much support or happiness to know that others aren't. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, you can leave your gumboots in the shed for a little bit longer. Distributors are confirming they will commit to go to field days this year, despite the fact it's been pushed all the way back to late November. Now, as someone who has gone and ruined shoes at field days a couple of times now, because I always forget my gumboots, this actually, I kind of feel like this pushing back to late November is not a terrible thing for the event because maybe the weather might just be a little bit drier. Not sure. But anyway, we're hearing that our new vehicles distributors have reconfirmed their commitment to what is the largest event of its type in the Southern Hemisphere. AutoTalk understands that so far, Mitsubishi Motors, Nissan, Hyundai, Isuzu Utes, Volkswagen, Ford, LDV, and SsangYong have confirmed sites for the field days, which will be from November 30 to December 1st at the Mystery Creek Events Centre near Hamilton. Do you think that makes much of a difference at moving dates, Graham? I mean, I know you're a big fan. You've been with me a couple of times, and you usually get the call asking where the ticket is. But do you think it's...
Well, it's more than
you've
that.
been going a lot longer than I have. Do you think it's a big deal that it's moved?
Yeah, okay. So unpack that for a second. I've been going to the field days since I was in short pants because I'm actually a part-time farmer as well, believe it or not, and I come from a farming background. So going to the field days for my family was the thing to do. Every single year we trudge on down. And I do have red bands, and they're not all brand new ones out of the warehouse either. So what will make a difference for the farming industry is whether this seasonally works in with your ability for drying off your stock, for example, like milking, drying off your stock and having time off. That sort of midwinter date where it's prior to calving worked out well for a lot of farmers, and that you could actually get away without everything happening all on top of you on the farm at the particular time. So whether it works for the agricultural sector, I don't know. But let's just forget for a minute the farmers. The field days has become the biggest show in town across New Zealand for displaying pretty much everything. It's like Briscoe's for farming. And so I don't know if it doesn't suit the agricultural sector, it'll make much difference because everyone who's anyone is going to be there. It's the first big trade show of its kind to display all these different products for a couple of years. Unless we have another significant outbreak, I can't see it failing. And I think from a manufacturer's perspective, you'd really want to be there. This will be a good one.
I think, and Matthew, you have an insight to this as well. The list of vehicle brands that are going or have committed to stay and have been kind of putting big efforts into field days over the other brands of the last couple of years are generally the ones with stuff to sell. I mean, it's almost a rare thing now that you see a really committed position from Toyota to field days. Ford goes, but they don't sell on the site. You know, if we look at who's going, LDV, Nissan, Mitsubishi, these are the guys who generally are the ones you can walk in and buy a ute tomorrow from, or can in normal circumstances. Do you think there's much reason beyond just the ability to sell straight away that people are going? I mean, is it that retail impetus, I guess?
Nothing replaces the ability to look and touch and smell a new car in person, I think, versus... I know we've talked a lot about selling cars online and the move to improve online offerings and stuff in the last few episodes. But to be able to go there and look at 5-6 different competing products all next to each other, I don't think there's anything that really substitutes that. My sort of, I guess my question, I'm not, you guys have been in the game longer than I have, obviously. I want to know, has New Zealand ever really had a proper car show? Because this is effectively New Zealand's biggest car show. What's the background on that?
Yeah, well, it has, Matthew, and we just haven't had car shows per se. I guess they died a natural death. And yeah, you're right. So the model sort of moved a wee bit online, and the idea of having a dedicated show at LSE showgrounds and things like that is long since gone. But see, the field days, I'll go back to a point Richard raised a second ago. If you're Ford and Toyota, right now when it comes to utes, you can sell them with your eyes closed. Bring the customer in the front door, take the order out, they go again. You just don't actually need the mechanism and the time away from your dealership to put a trade stand together when you've got all the product that you could ever want to sell. But if you're another distributor, perhaps, and you're maybe 2 or 3 or 4 down the list of the product that you have in terms of ute sales, for example, this is a really good chance to actually engage with people. And we can't forget what the field days are all about. Everyone comes down with the family. It's a day out. You do wander around lots of different stands, pick up lots of brochures, lots of ideas. And it's the first real opportunity I think a lot of distributors are going to have to make contact with real people again. Because they've done it online for the last couple of years. There's been, we've all moved our way around it, but this is going to be a really good chance to re-engage directly with a representative in your local area. And again, I think back to the years that we used to go down there and we bought tractors, we bought not combine harvesters, but electric gates and spray units and bits and pieces, all because you could go down there and actually talk to a real life salesperson, look, touch, feel, kick the tire, so to speak, And I don't think that's gone away in the industry. And whether it's you're selling cars or light trucks or hay balers, we've been starved of that human interaction for so long. So from Ford and Toyota's perspective, I can see why they're not so interested, perhaps. But I think it would be a mistake not to be there, because this is your big chance you've been waiting for the last couple of years.
I would think back to the last field days I went to, which I think was the last physical field day. So that would have been 2020? No, 2019. 2019. We were there, and we were at the start of the clean car plan process. There's 20. Has there been one since? I'm trying to think.
We're 2 years down. We had COVID in February 2020.
It's amazing how time flies. Well, we were at the very start of the clean car process at the last time I was at a field days. And we had the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern there. There was a lot of discussion at the time about the announcements and how the fee rates were going to be going on utes, and this was all there, and so on and so forth. And the PR for the PM came through, and she was picking journalists to kind of cut up a nudge and get some questions. And there was something else going on, totally unrelated to field days. Some big story going on out there. Someone had done something dumb in Wellington, which is not particularly unusual. And I think she was trying to find a few either rural or other journalists to maybe answer some questions, a little bit softball, to deflect from this other stuff that was going on. And she came up and said, "Oh, do you want to ask a question?" "Yeah, sure. I'm here looking at vehicles." And she said, "Oh, great. You go ask the questions." They gave me this plum position up the front. And of course, I asked this question, which is now a little bit famous in the trade, about the utes. And then I actually got a very quick follow-up to pressure on it, and was convinced that there were going to be these electric utes coming. And that was I think it was a bit of an own goal by the PM's PR there. I also remember that field days because I loved the LDV stand that year, because they had it was Ssangyong LDV. They had the DMZ ute, which you've seen recently, Graham, and is a pretty cool vehicle, which is a Ssangyong Muso ute with a metal hardtop on it and the back wall cut through, and four captain's chairs. And you can go and buy these. They are built and spec'd for Korean military. You can buy them in New Zealand. But also they had a very good curry lunch. Seems odd to a field days to have an Indian restaurant inside your stand, but they did, and it was very good. But anyway, we'll make you go this year as a trade journo, Matthew. Now there's some dodgy people out there, and the police are encouraging car sellers to ask for ID following test drive thefts. County Manukau Detective Senior Sergeant with the New Zealand Police has issued a warning to those selling cars following a spate of thefts in the Auckland region. Kevin Tierman warns that sellers should be careful when handling test drives with customers, with police having fielded numerous reports of thieves stealing cars during the test drive process. Now, this is an interesting one, because I know in the last couple of years I've test driven cars at dealerships. And I don't know if it's because maybe they've spotted me or knew who I was, in fairness. But they didn't ask for any ID before I drove out of the yard. And it's kind of a weird thing, because surely getting a license and some details would be good, not just for security, but also for the sales process. You guys ask for ID, Graham?
I actually struggle with this one. And look, if you're a motor vehicle retailer watching this right now, I struggle with the idea that you wouldn't ask for photo ID for a test drive. You're about to give the keys to a $15,000 to $20,000 thing that you own to a person that walked in off the street. The very least you could do is ask to see who they actually are. And I actually can't even fathom that you wouldn't ask for at least a copy of their driver's license. So, for example, our protocol here at Croydon's that you must produce a valid driver's license. We won't test drive you on learners either. They've got to be restricted or above. And that's for insurance requirements partly, but also it's just to make sure that somebody hasn't pulled the learner's license out of the hat yesterday. But the other little trick is always ask for their details and write it down first before they pull their license out. And the reason for that is, if for any chance they are using a fraudulently obtained driver's license, it's a whole lot harder to recall what's on it before they've given it to you than it is afterwards. So I write down all the details, and the staff here write down the details first and then ask for a copy of the license so you can match between the two. Generally speaking, people obviously know who they are and they know their basic address and details when you can match it against the license with a photo. But again, if you're not producing or asking your clients to produce ID, come on, guys, this is 2022. And I can think back a couple of months ago now, we had a customer that came in on a reasonably expensive vehicle. And he took personal affront that we asked for his driver's license. He said, "Why? What am I giving my ID for?" And I said, "Well, giving you the keys, in this case, $25,000 vehicle. I don't know who you are." And he got really offended. And I said, "Well, off you go then." I'll actually let the customer go. I let him walk. It was not worth the risk. So top tip from Graham on a Thursday afternoon before Easter: if you're not getting ID right now for your test drives, proper ID, ask yourself what your insurance company knows about that and how exposed you're going to be when you're found out.
I remember back when, just after we started AutoTalk in 2010, one of the first stories we had was the head of a credit rating agency in New Zealand, fairly well known within the automotive trade at the time, who suggested that you basically should be credit checking all your customers as they walk across the yard so you can start the process and work out what you should be doing with them. And no one's ever suggesting that. That's at the extreme end of things. But yeah. You wouldn't be affronted if someone asked you for a ID and a blood sample when you went to test drive a car, Matthew?
I keep a blood sample in my pocket at all times just to give people, even just on the street. I think it's a good thing to do. Reading between the lines on that story, just to, I guess, put a cap on it, is I get the impression that it's mainly more to do with sort of private sellers and that sort of cowboys world of Facebook Marketplace and all the people there you go, there's the laugh. But they Tierman cites in that report that people, he encourages people to use more reputable sales outlets. The person who was caught, exactly. The person who was caught stole what was alleged of stealing 18 vehicles, and it sounds. I would guess that it's probably a repeated process using social media.
He'd need a vehicle. He'd need to become a registered motor vehicle trader to dispose of them.
Hey, buy a car off Facebook Marketplace. What could possibly go wrong?
Right, to the absolute other end of the market, luxury is electrifying, according to Lexus. Lexus New Zealand says the luxury market is electrifying rapidly, and it is playing well for the hybrid heavy brand. In 2020, Lexus head Andrew Davis says 70% of the segment was electrified, rising to 33% last year and 43% year to date this year. And the expectation is it will end the year over 55%. They are saying this as they launch their first plug-in hybrid, the NX450H. They've got their first electric vehicle last year. They're getting their first dedicated electric vehicle, the RX450, RZ450 next year. Interesting time in that. Now, of course, a big chunk of that electrification is Tesla. I mean, that is really why those statistics are shifting so far. So, as they've argued, it's a question of whether you'd call a Tesla a luxury car. I tend to lean on calling it a luxury car. The question is, I'm pissed about the fact they keep on calling all this stuff electrified. Matthew, do you think Lexus is just trying to ride the positive momentum behind EVs with a lot of the ways things they say about hybrids, electrified and self-charging electric vehicle? What are your thoughts?
Short answer, yes, absolutely. That's what they're doing. I think we've seen Toyota for quite a few years now market hybrids as self-charging electric vehicles, and which is obviously a bit of a stretch. You got COVID there, Richard. What's going on?
Anyhow.
And more recently, they've embarked on about 2 or 3 different marketing campaigns that all hinge around sort of educating the public on EVs. And I don't mind that sort of in theory, but obviously a lot of those campaigns are dedicated to spreading the word about hybrids as well as PHEVs and EVs on top. And it's hard to not see, the what's being done between the lines.
Mm-hmm. I understand you've just grabbed yourself a little slice of Lexus electrification, Graham.
Ooh.
Yeah, a little CT200 F Sport, which I've had my little nitty paws looking at for quite some time now. But look, we deal in hybrids day in, day out. But I'm just going to make a little point there. don't get too pious and high and mighty as an industry, and certainly as industry media, about the issue between EVs and hybrids. We don't want to end up being a Labor government-esque, we'll tell you what you must do and what you must think. I think the industry is making really good strides ahead towards providing the public with the products the public wants at the time. And I think the hybrid model at the moment for a lot of Kiwis is working really, really well. Don't forget, only a couple of 3 years ago, everyone was just buying standard ICE cars, and the idea of coming and buying a car that had something more than just 4 cylinders of petrol was a really strange idea. I think we've come a long way, and I don't necessarily think it's our role as an industry to dictate what people want. I think personally, and I could be struck down for saying this, I think Toyota and Lexus have been really smart the way they've brought the hybrid product to market across an entire range. And it's not just the new market, it's the used import market from Japan as well. And
now I'm not gonna strike you down for saying that, but my point is let's not conflate it. I mean, a hybrid is a great thing in its own right, and Toyota's done fantastically, and I think for a lot of users they are fantastic. Plug-in hybrid, very good in certain situations. It's trying to claim one thing as the other. That's my position. A hybrid is not an EV. An EV is not a hybrid.
Look, Richard, how many people come in here and say, "Oh, I'm here to look at these fancy electric cars you've got," and it's an Aqua or it's a Fielder hybrid? I just think we're probably reading too much into it. Yes, of course, Lexus and Toyota are taking a bit of a little tricky path through that one, but it's a whole lot better than just pretending that they're never going to offer anything at all in that sector. I think it's a nice progressive path, and they're bringing their customers on board with them. And you can guarantee that the minute that Lexus and Toyota have an electric range, they'll do just the same thing and walk people into that at a pace that everyone can manage. That's my 10 cents worth.
Yeah, no, Toyota does nothing until it's ready. Really,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. They have some of their technology. They'd argue otherwise, but their hybrid technology was around a very long time before they really started to push it into mainstream vehicles. A lot of their transmission and engine technology tends to be around a very long time, and it sticks. And as a result, it is very, very, very reliable. They avoid the bleeding edge for a very good reason, and it's going to be the same with electric vehicles. They're going to be behind the pace when at the start, but I assure you, when they do arrive, it's going to be very good equipment, and I suspect very reliable too. And I can't imagine there'll be too many battery problems with the Toyotas when they arrive. I may be wrong, but I suspect that's more the case. They've been waiting.
I'd say you're bang on.
Technology to be ready. Now, of course, interesting, they offset that by at the same time they launched the NX plug-in hybrid, they launched the LX. So their version of the Land Cruiser, 3.3 litre turbocharged diesel, luxury interiors.
Nice.
What do they call it in a marketing think tank? A backcountry boardroom. Bringing some backcountry to Ponsonby. I suspect it'll be very popular in Queenstown. There's a reason I suspect Lexus has a Queenstown dealership for a relatively small space and a relatively small brand. But look, otherwise, I think they're doing pretty well. They're on a target for 2,000 vehicles a year, and I think they will get there eventually.
They'll smash it.
Yep. Well, I think if you order an LX now, you're going to be waiting till the end of next year, which I still think is a shorter waiting list than going in to buy a Land Cruiser. So Land Cruiser buyers, you can probably shorten your wait slightly by going in and dropping down not substantially more on a LX. And they are saying there is a hybrid LX coming. So that will be interesting, and maybe means we might see a hybrid Land Cruiser at some point, which some may say is just a little bit too sacrilegious. Anyway, sacrilegious is from The Simpsons. Right, now, thank you again, Matthew and Graham, for joining us. Everyone's going to go off and enjoy their Easter weekend. You guys up to anything?
Working. Going to open on Easter Saturday, so I'll be here at the dealership, but I'm sort of not too committed about Monday at this stage. I think the retail sector, the motor industry, it's been a couple of fairly onkus years, and I suspect that a lot of dealers are doing everything they can right now to play catch up. And if catch up means you work the days that you need to, then so be it. But if you don't, have a really happy Easter break, everybody, and treat your staff well. If you've got a team, make sure your team is comfortable with the time they're working and they get the appropriate days off, because I think it's really important to have a break as well. So we'll catch you on the downside.
If you don't work the Saturday, Graham is stealing your customers. And Matthew, you'll be going into a sugar coma and counting your Hot Wheels?
I've never been a big chocolate eater, actually. I will have some form of sugar coma, and I will count some Hot Wheels.
I've got more than you, Matthew.
Yeah, just a couple. Off to we'll be going to a beach. Just picked up the new Mercedes C-Class C200, so time to put some Ks on that and have some fun.
How terrible! How terrible! Right, everyone, go away, enjoy. Don't forget to catch us again. We'll be back to our normal time next week of Friday at 10 a.m. and here for more random industry BS and totally unrelated stuff that we just rant on about. But it's awesome. We'll catch you then. Don't forget, go to autotalk.co.nz, like the Facebook page or the YouTube page to be kept up to date. Thanks, everyone.